This is the Policy Center for the New South. We're talking today about the Nigerian energy crisis and ask the questions, what prospects for green recovery and transatlantic integration? Our expert today is Rim Berahab, and I say welcome, and I will ask you the first question right away. Nigeria, as you know, is one of Africa's largest oil exporters, with an estimated 37 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves. Nigeria also has the largest natural gas reserves on the continent, estimated at 5.4 trillion cubic meters. It seems hard to understand why such a blessed nation is facing an almost permanent energy crisis. Do you have an answer which does not fill a book or a library to explain the reasons?
First of all, thank you very much for having me, and I will try to be as concise as possible. Indeed, a paradox continents, not just Nigeria alone, to be endowed with such rich natural and energy resources and yet continue to face persistent challenges, not only in the energy sector, but in the economy as a whole. And there is actually a situation called the Dutch disease, which is a concept that describes an economic phenomenon where a rapid development of one sector of the economy, such as the discovery of oil, precipitates a decline in other sectors. Because in reality, the volatility of commodity prices cannot sustain Nigeria's economy for long periods of time. In addition, the abundance of natural resources in Nigeria, oil and gas, has also led to poorer governance and conflicts, which didn't benefit the development of a sustainable and secure energy sector. Because the country has indeed concentrated its efforts on intensifying oil extraction and crude oil exports at the expense of modernizing energy infrastructure, increasing access to energy, and enhancing energy security. So consequently, we have a very difficult situation where the main resource that drives the economy, in this case crude oil, is the very one that hinders its development.
While researching your splendid paper, did you ever pause and ask yourself, how on earth will this nation of 200 million people ever be able to deal with these incredible multiple challenges, like frequent power supply interruptions, unstable oil prices, terrorist movements, dilapidated energy infrastructure, theft of crude oil, COVID-19, and yet another recession? It's not surprising you mentioned that statistics are painting a bleak picture. In your opinion, which fundamental changes are urgent, feasible, and realistic to assure a stable and predictable Nigeria, which is not concentrating only on oil?
Yeah, it's, as you mentioned, an extraordinary challenge, but not insurmountable, because Nigeria is also a country of opportunities, opportunities which are crystallized in its important human capital and its considerable renewable energy resources. Now, policy-wise, if we want to summarize these issues facing the energy sector, we can group them in four main categories. First, the prevalence of a regime of price control, notably through subsidies. Second, a weak concern for cost recovery and lack of adequate economic incentives to engage in efficient production investment behavior. Three, the multiplicity of economic and non-economic objectives without proper identification of trade-offs among these objectives, particularly in the electricity and petroleum products market. And fourth, institutional and governance failures, which induced gross distortions and inefficiencies in production, investment choice, etc. So to meet these important challenges, you have to mention a complete overhaul of the energy sector will be required through the establishment of clear regulations and institutional frameworks that is capable of addressing each of these challenges And one of the main preconditions for change is first and foremost to diversify the Nigerian economy away from dependence on oil revenues. And in the meantime, to ensure the proper functioning of the oil and gas sector, therefore maintaining upstream investments to ensure adequate production, especially for gas, remains vital to provide stability for the economy, even in the short term, because gas can be used as a transitional fuel to buy time for putting the appropriate transition structures in, which will allow to diversify the energy mix later on through installing appropriate infrastructure, creating full awareness to promote and develop the abundant renewable energy resources present in the country, as well as to enhance the security of supply.
That is a very wonderful description, but it's also, how do you say, a lot of wishful thinking to believe that Nigeria will fundamentally move away from the concentration on oil. Your analytical research is impressive, but your outlook is rather depressive. You did not mention in your paper any political failures, which I understand, or economic mismanagement of governments. Is the total reliance on oil 90% of all national exports, the reluctance or hesitation to move towards renewable energy, supporting manufacturing and agriculture, not only a structural failure, but also a real political one? In your paper, you're shying away from this. I understand it's an economic analytical work and not a political research, but I still like to know, one can't shy away, why can't they manage?
Yeah, so first of all, to point out to one thing you mentioned at the beginning, of course, if we're being realistic, Nigeria will not stop use oil and gas, even in the medium term. So all of these measures or opportunities will take time, and we have to meanwhile put the appropriate structures to be able to reach that final objectives. Now, with regards to the outlook, I'd rather call it realistic, because as you mentioned, going back to your question, as an economist, my aim for the paper was to take an introspective look to analyze Nigeria's energy crisis from an economic perspective primarily, but there is no doubt that the energy and economic crisis are closely linked to geopolitical or political consideration. Because if we go back to the concept of Dutch disease, its implication is to poorer governance and conflicts, and it gave rise to governments that are less accountable to people, have less incentive for institution buildings, and fail to implement growth enhancing reforms. Besides this, higher corruption, more rent-seeking activity, and conflicts and erosion of social capital are some of the other outcomes associated with this Dutch disease. So as I said before, this combined with the overdependence on crude oil exports and the fact that the volatility of commodity prices cannot sustain Nigeria's economy has led to the underdevelopment of other sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture. So therefore, greater emphasis on institution building and government accountability will without a doubt be needed to overcome these issues.
You mention in your paper the availability of hydropower, solar, wind, and biomass, but it's obvious that Nigeria does not have the funds, investment, nor credits available, or infrastructure and skills necessary to attempt liberating itself of its total reliance on gas and oil. Is it correct to suspect that the governments in Lagos are opting to remain with their own cash machine, oil, despite the volatility of oil prices on international markets? Or how else is it possible to explain that manufacturing and agriculture have been painfully neglected to such an extent?
So there is without a doubt a certain resistance to go towards more renewable energies, given that, given the nature of the Nigerian economy of being an oil rent country. However, if we look at the global level, and we see that despite the COVID-19 crisis, the renewable energy industry has been fairly resilient in the past year. And even in Nigeria, there are some phenomenon or progress in this area, because in the past year, Nigeria has witnessed a wave of philanthropic activities and public-private partnerships in the renewable energy industry. So for instance, the African Development Bank and the Nigerian government have launched last year a 200 million national electrification project to address energy access deficits by primarily channeling private sector investments into mini-grids and off-grid solutions. In addition, the EU has also in the past year offered a grant, which has the potential to unlock up to 100 million euros in investments in renewable energy in Nigeria. And there are some small initiatives from the Nigerian government itself, which has included a solar power strategy in its economic sustainability plan post-COVID that was published in 2020. So this strategy specifically aims to increase or install 5 million solar home systems and mini grids, and thus impacting up to 25 million beneficiaries. And within this strategy, access to low-cost financing from development finance institutions and the Central Bank of Nigeria would be provided to private sector installers so that they're able to install these systems at an affordable price. So there is now a clear ambition renewable energy industry, mainly through decentralized mini-grids and off-grids. However, as we established earlier, effective implementation of these strategies will require a sound governance and an increased coordination between institutions and agencies, because there are still several barriers that hinder the deployment of renewable energy, particularly technical barriers such as cost and pricing barriers, legal and regulatory, as well as market performance barriers.
Why then is Nigeria, one of Africa's largest oil exporters, able to give only 53% of its population access to grid electricity, with the result, as you have written in your great study, that it has one of the lowest electricity consumptions per capita in Africa and is recording the highest level of power outage duration of any nation on the continent? Isn't that amazing to you?
Yeah, this is actually the 1 million question, and we're going back to the fact that this is a very intriguing paradox. So several factors may explain this observation. In fact, Nigeria's energy supply infrastructure has not expanded as rapidly as population growth, despite huge public expenditures, which made it inadequate to meet the need of the growing population. And here we're also touching up on these governance issues and corruption issues. And more, the development of the oil infrastructure in Nigeria has not increased the reliable connection to the power grid, which led to numerous challenges in the generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructures. So for example, net electricity generation remains far lower than the capacity installed. It stood at about 28% of the total capacity in 2017. Also, Nigeria's transmission system is again also well below the total installed capacity and is characterized by high losses on the grid, reflecting critical operational challenges. And similarly, Nigeria's distribution companies suffer from significant losses as well, with around 46% of energy lost due to technical, commercial, and collection issues. All of these challenges have resulted in a low and unreliable access to electricity. And as you mentioned, currently only 53% of Nigeria's population has access to electricity. And according to the World Bank, the economic cost of power shortages in Nigeria is very high and equivalent to around 2% of its GDP on.
Which means, in other ways, that Morocco, which does not have oil, has a better electricity relation than Nigeria. You know, and coming back to Morocco's success, a pipeline project between Nigeria and Morocco has been in discussion since 2016. The pipeline which would connect Nigerians' gas to every coastal town in West Africa, reaching Tangiers, Morocco, and Cadiz, Spain. How close is this project of being realized? Or could it be in jeopardy because of the economic chaos produced by the coronavirus?
Yeah, of course. We don't know yet when this project will be finalized, particularly since it includes several countries and faces many challenges linked not only to the coronavirus, but also to financing, land and environmental permits, but also security, because many armed groups, including Boko Haram, are present in the Delta region of Nigeria, which could disturb the supply and provision of gas in neighboring countries. However, much progress has been made since 2016. So in May 2017, Morocco and Nigeria signed cooperation agreements to sponsor a feasibility study, the results of which were delivered in early 2019. Also in 2019, the two countries contracted with PenSpen to conduct the first phase of front-end engineering and design study. And during the same year, the pipeline proposal was presented at a special meeting of the Economic Community of West African States. And I would like to point out that the benefits of this pipeline go beyond the delivery of Nigerian gas to Morocco in Europe, and are intended to also promote trade, regional integration, and diversification of energy in West Africa. But as you mentioned, with the current situation following the COVID-19 crisis pandemic, progress may be stalled for a while. So we will have to follow closely the evolution of these projects in the upcoming months.
Very diplomatic answer. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful week. And thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much for having me again.